Hello guys, welcome back to Olivia's Blooms. Today I am going to be doing some direct sowing of some cool season hardy annuals. So to start, before we go outside, I just want to give you a little bit of information and show you what I'm going to be sowing today. Now, all of these seeds are cool season hardy annuals in my area. I am in Charlottesville, zone 7A. And what that means is these are annual flowers, so they're only gonna last 1 year. They're not gonna come back year after year, but they will survive the winter here. They're supposed to survive the winter here, assuming they don't get too wet or damaged by wind or snow or anything like that. So the idea behind planting cool season hardy annuals in the fall is you want to grow them to a very small size plant, and they overwinter as that small size. You don't want them to get too big and have too much foliage, because then that foliage will get damaged in the winter. And then in the spring they'll have a jump start and they'll bloom earlier for you and typically have really long, healthy, strong stems, versus if you had started them in the very early spring / late winter. So some of these are gonna be a little bit of an experiment for me. I'm in a new home. We've been here about a year. I've only had 1 season of gardening here, so the soil is different, even the microclimate's different. So, but I think the best way to figure out what works for you is to experiment. So what I have here also are seeds that are recommended to be direct sown. So what that means is I'm going to sow them in the ground and water them there and let them grow, versus some cool season hardy annuals which I'm growing in my basement, and then I will transplant those outside once they are the right size, about 3 to 5 inches. And again, how I figure out which I'm going to direct sow and which I'm going to start in my basement is mostly driven by what's recommended on the seed packet, but also through experimentation, because some of these say you can do either. So if I can direct sow it though, that's usually the easiest, and that's usually what I'll try first. What I'm going to be direct sowing today, I have a couple seeds that I've saved myself. These are Nigella, Jekyll, and Hyde mix. Nice big seeds there. I also saved, and what does really well in my area is some Larkspur, and this is a salmon Larkspur variety that I had beautiful tall stems on this spring. So I saved some of that seed. I'm gonna be direct sowing that as well. I have some Cress here, and this is from Floret, and this is a filler flower, or foliage actually, and I tried direct sowing this in the spring per the recommendations, and I did not have great luck. I'm going to try direct sowing it again in the fall and see if it does better. I also am trying this in the basement, so doing a little bit of an experiment with this to see if I can, which works better for me. And I really want that foliage. I was really missing that this year in my arrangements. I also have Bells of Ireland. I grew these in my previous garden and I love these. They're so unique looking and they smell so good, and whenever I put them in a bouquet, people are always wowed by it. So these are notoriously hard to germinate, so I'm gonna throw a lot in the ground, but I have had success direct sowing these before, so we'll see how they do in my new garden. I'll also be starting some Bupleurum, more foliage filler flower. Haven't grown this before at all, so this will be fun to try. And finally, oh, look at how gorgeous these are. The Rudbeckia Sahara mix. I've had pretty good luck with the regular Indian summer Rudbeckia. If you've watched my videos, you know that I grew the Prairie Sun Rudbeckia this year and didn't love it. But because Rudbeckia, it does really well in my soil and the soil in our area, I'm gonna give this variety a try and hope that they hold up better in bouquets for me, because I know they do for other people. So I've got my seeds ready to go. Let's go outside and get these in the ground. Before we head over to direct sow our seeds, I wanted to show you, I am in the process of hardening off my cauliflower, and look how great they're doing. And again, and here are my mustard greens and some of the extra cauliflower. Again, hardening off is just bringing the plants outside a few hours at a time, a little more each day, so they get used to the sunshine and the wind, and so they don't shock when you bring them from your basement outside. And you can see I have them, this is their first time out, so not in direct sunshine yet. All right, back to the seeds. Okay, so the only other tools and things I'll be using today for direct sowing, I have my pay dirt compost, which I find really helps and gives these seedlings a great start, and my Biotone starter fertilizer, and of course, my hose. All right, so the first seeds I'm going to plant today are my Larkspur. Now, I already had Larkspur here. We are by my bird feeder. You can see the amazing backdrop of my next door neighbor, her garden. She's got this incredible Indian squash growing, but don't get too distracted by that like I do. It's so cool. So I'm going to sow some more Larkspur seed here. This is where I had it in the spring. It is pretty good at self-sowing itself, but just because the soil here hasn't been great, I'm gonna make sure and just give it a little extra help, make sure that I get some more Larkspur in the spring. And it was this lovely salmon coral color. The first thing I'm gonna do is wet the soil, and that, again, when you're starting seeds, whether it's indoors or outdoors, you want to make sure they stay really moist until they are up. So I start off with nice moist soil that also helps the seeds stick. Okay, next I'm going to spread a thin layer of compost in the area that I want to sow my seeds in. Okay, here we are under the bird feeder, and if you'll notice, or if you watched any of my other videos, there is tons of bird seed here, and it is mostly grass. I've already accepted that I'm going to be battling that, and I'm just gonna have to get here and aggressively get rid of any grass that sprouts. You can see some that sprouted right there, so that my Larkspur seedlings can grow and thrive without a lot of competition. So I'm spreading out a good layer of compost. If you're wondering what this is right here, that is the supply line for our drip tubing that we have throughout our garden. Now, this area is, I think the mulch is pretty much gone or disintegrated. I have some areas in my garden where I mulched in the spring with a wood chip, and I have found that seeds don't sprout well if there's a lot of wood chips around. Bigger plants and transplants do okay, but the seedlings, the seeds themselves don't germinate well when there's a lot of just wood. So if there was, and I'll probably have to do this in some other areas, but if there was a lot of wood chips, I would just move them out of the way and then put down the compost. All right, so there's our nice, just thin little layer of compost, and that's really to make sure the seeds are touching some sort of nice soil. So this seed I collected, I've not really spent time cleaning or sorting, and so I'm gonna spread this heavier than I would a seed packet that I bought, and that's because the seeds you buy in seed packets have been sorted for, you know, maximum germination and seed size and seed health. This is just what I grabbed from any pot I could, so I'm gonna seed a little bit heavier, and I don't mind because I got so much seed from the Larkspur. I have plenty to go around. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and spread it around. And now I'm gonna add the Biotone. I probably should have added that first. It doesn't make a huge difference, but I'm gonna sprinkle some Biotone on this as well. And just a light sprinkling, because these little seedlings aren't gonna need a ton. And now I'm gonna do something you might think is weird, but I'm gonna walk on it. And that's, again, just to make sure the seeds are nice and touching the soil. Now, again, you want to do some research on the type of seeds that you are sowing, because Larkspur and Delphinium, they like it dark to germinate. And so I am going to, I'm pulling a weed first, I'm going to water again to make sure these seeds themselves are nice and moist. But then I'm going to put another layer of compost over this, and that is just to ensure, and a very thin layer, but I'm going to put another one on that's going to ensure that they are in darkness until they're up and growing. Some seeds though, that say you want to surface sow them, you will not want to add another layer of compost on. And I will be out here, unless it's raining, I'll be out here in the morning and in the evening to make sure the soil is nice and moist. Especially, we have some really hot 90-degree days coming up here, unfortunately, which might speed up germination for some of these, but it also dries them out very quickly. All right, so I'm sprinkling on a layer of compost. I'll give it one more spray, and then I'll keep you guys updated on how the germination is going. All right, next seed I'm going to direct sow is my Nigella. And I was looking around the garden, and this area is not going to have a ton of spring interest. And I do have some beautiful pink lupins that you can't, they're gone right now, but hopefully they will come back beautifully in the spring. And I think the blue and white Nigella, sort of that foamy, airy texture right next to that strong spike, would look beautiful. So right now I have my zinnias planted here. These are the Zinderella. And if you look down here, you can see that I have a lot of wood chips in this area. I think what I'm gonna do is, and you know, it's okay if I'm planting these near other plants, because again, they're only gonna grow, you know, this big or so, hopefully, before winter, and the zinnias are gonna die off when it gets cold, so it shouldn't be too much competition. But I'm going to clear away sort of a swoop back here. Okay, I'm clearing the area. And then I'll lay my compost down, and that's where I'll do my Nigella. I don't want it too close to my spruce here, but I think this will be a really good spot if I can get it to grow. We shall see. Oh, very bad Japanese beetle. No, no, no. Give this one another coating of compost on top. I had luck just surface sowing this last fall. All right, I'm gonna water this in, and let's find a spot for our other seeds. All right, here we are in the next part of my garden. And this area is, it looks really full right now, but it's really full of annuals. And right here I have an annual cardinal basil. I'm really liking the spot here. And oh, it smells so good. I have these celosia. I don't know if you can see these. Were supposed to be really, and I'll tilt you down so you can see, but these were supposed to be really tall plants. And this is what I mean about the soil not being fantastic. They're really short, and we're still working on the organic matter and the soil quality in this area. But I had picked Rudbeckia mix. I think this would look pretty. So, the first thing I'm going to do again, this area has lots of wood chips, so I'm going to clear a path for my Rudbeckia. I'm going to water, add the compost, add the biochem starter fertilizer, and water again. You know the drill. Let's get these seeds planted. Alright, next we are in a part of my garden that really struggles with the soil. We have echinacea planted here because echinacea can do really well in some poor soils. And behind me is a canna that did really well, but this is, again, not a perennial here. I might dig it up and save it over the winter and try and plant it again, but potentially not in this spot. So this is where I'm going to be planting my Bells of Ireland. And I also have back here some iris that I think will be a really nice contrast and companion for the Bells of Ireland. And I have sort of a strip of empty space back here. Again, if the canna is not going to be here, then I think this will be a good spot for my Bells of Ireland. So I'm going to clear away the wood chips, put down the mulch and the fertilizer, put down my seeds and water. All right, let's get the Bells of Ireland planted. I want to show you guys something real quick. This area, I actually direct sowed some Bells of Ireland this spring. They did not do well. Here's about as tall as the few I got managed to grow, and that is absolutely not tall enough. Now, I did not clear away the wood chips. You can see this one's surrounded by wood chips. I don't know if that contributed or if it's just the soil quality. Here's a peek here at what our soil looks like underneath here. Red clay. But I'm gonna try again with a lot more compost. I also let these little guys go to seed because I want them to spread around their seed as well. And see if they do better as a fall planting as well, because this again was a spring planting. Here's another little one just coming up now that I didn't plant, so it must be either from one of the ones that went to seed this summer, or this might be a leftover from the spring, but that's what they look like when they're little. Okay, here's the spot I chose for my Bupleurum. And if you don't know what Bupleurum is, it's described as a blue-green eucalyptus-like leaf foliage with contrasting bright chartreuse yellow floral umbel-shaped bracts. Self-explanatory. So I've seen these though, and they're gorgeous, and they are going to have like that blue-green. And again, this is a very dark area of my garden, but I do have yellow echinacea. You can't really tell what the color is because it's pretty much done. But I've got the yellow echinacea in this area and some very dark foliage here. So I think this blue-green would look really nice. And again, this looks full, but these are my cosmos, so they are not going to be here next spring. And I think this would be a great spot for the Bupleurum. So let's try it here. All right, here's the last spot where we are going to be direct sowing fall hardy annuals, and we are actually in my vegetable garden. This is my strawberry bed, and you can see the strawberries are trying to take over. I think I'm going to be moving them somewhere else, maybe to a vertical growing system like the green stock in either later this fall or in the spring. But in the meantime, I'm gonna be planting my cress right here in the middle. It's not a ton of space, but I think it's a good amount for the experiment I'm doing. Now, I wanna show you quickly a couple other things. I was struggling with my Zinderellas this season, being nice and fluffy. I was getting mostly singles. I wanted to test them and see if I grew them in a raised bed, if they do better, but nope, I think it's just, you gotta wait for a few flushes before you get those fluffy blooms. But I planted those here. Those will be out of the bed here soon as it gets cold. I also direct sowed some cress about, I want to say, a month to maybe 6 weeks ago. If I can find the exact date, I'll put it up on the screen. But not doing well. I wanted to see if maybe I planted it later in the season, if it would do well in the cool weather of the fall, but it's already bloomed and gone to seed, and you can see I did not get great stem length on that, and it's been eaten by bugs. So not gonna plant them that time of year again. So now I'm gonna try them as a cool season hardy annual. And these are from Florette, and she recommends direct sowing them, so that's what I'm gonna do. She also recommends these as a fall sown hardy annual in areas where it can overwinter. So this will be an experiment, but that's okay. That's kind of what's fun about gardening sometimes. So this soil is already really, really rich with organic matter because it's my raised bed. I'm not gonna add any more compost, but I am just gonna add a little bit of fertilizer. I previously had my fall sown Nigella here, and oh my gosh, it exploded. If I have a picture of that, I will put that up here too. I'm probably gonna have some more Nigella volunteers because all of that Nigella went to seed. So this spot did well for me with fall sown hardy annuals last year. Let's see if it'll do well again. All right, hopefully you can see that. Those are the little cress seeds. Just gonna sprinkle them around. I'm gonna press them in with my hand since I'm not gonna stand up and stand in my raised bed. And then I will water these. Hopefully they'll do well for me because I would love some of those tall green spikes in my arrangements. Before we water those in though, take a look at my snapdragons. I planted these early spring before our last frost, and they have just been blooming and blooming and blooming. I've been cutting on them pretty hard. Look at this pink. Okay, too easy to get distracted by flowers. Let's water these in, and then we'll have all of our seeds direct sown. Pretty easy. Now, just a couple other quick things. You can see a good example here to keep in mind when you're direct sowing. One is water gently, because you don't want the seeds to wash away, otherwise you'll end up with a bunch down where the water's puddling, and I've had that happen to me before, so I try and do a very light spray. And then you're going to want to keep in mind as well your heights. I am notoriously terrible about this, and I will forget to look at the heights and only think about what the colors will look like together. And so height is very important. You want to make sure you got the taller things in the back, then graduate down from there just to make sure everything is getting sun. Here's a little impromptu view of the vegetable garden. I'll be doing a tour here next. But I hope you had fun direct sowing seeds with me today. I know I did, and I will keep you updated on how these are doing. Thanks. Welcome back to Olivia's Blooms. No. Coating of